Madam Speaker, let me wish you good morning, and my good friend, Mr. Cole, good morning. It feels like just a couple of hours ago I was saying good morning. But let me say to the gentleman, he looks marvelous for getting no sleep, and it's great to be with you. Madam Speaker, the Rules Committee met and reported a rule, House Resolution 972, providing for the consideration of the Senate amendment to H.R. 2471, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2022. It provides for a motion to concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 2471 with a House amendment and 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Appropriations. It divides the question on adoption of the motion into 2 votes in the order specified by the Chair, and provides that if any portion of the divided question fails, the House shall be considered to have made no disposition of the Senate amendment. The rule also provides for consideration of H.J. Res. 75, the extension of Continuing Appropriations Act of 2022 under a closed rule. It provides 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Appropriations, and provides for 1 motion to recommit. Finally, the rule provides for consideration of H.R. 6968, the Suspending Energy Imports from Russia Act, under a closed rule. It provides 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Ways and Means, and provides 1 motion to recommit. Madam Speaker, the bills contained in this rule are about investing in our communities and families here at home and living up to our values abroad. Throughout last summer, House Democrats were hard at work passing appropriation bills funding nearly all of the federal government to build on the momentum of our economic recovery. This full-year omnibus is the product of extensive bipartisan, bicameral negotiations. Both sides have come together to produce an agreement to fund the government that I think has resulted in a very, very good bill. This means this agreement does not include everything I wanted, and I know it doesn't include everything my Republican friends wanted. But I think at the end of the day, it's a good package that is going to benefit the American people. I especially want to recognize Chairwoman DeLauro and Ranking Member Granger and thank them for forging a bipartisan path forward. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the incredible staff of the Appropriations Committee, as well as the incredible staff of the Rules Committee, Democrats and Republicans, who have worked tirelessly to bring this legislation to the floor today. I think most of my colleagues here do not appreciate how hard the staff works, and I think the American people ought to be proud of those who serve up here in both parties for their public service. The work of Chairwoman DeLauro and Ranking Member Granger could not have come at a more critical time. We are at a moment in history that demands a strong, confident America. And the certainty provided by this omnibus will allow us to tackle some of our country's biggest challenges by helping to support good-paying American jobs, by building ladders of opportunity for hardworking families, by confronting the existential threat of climate change, and by investing in life-saving research into maternal health, mental health, and opiate abuse. I am proud that we negotiated a government funding package that centers the needs of middle-class and working families, not the rich and not on powerful special interests. I'm particularly proud that one of the provisions included in this package is funding for a White House conference on food, nutrition, hunger, and health. It is something that we have worked together on in a bipartisan way in the Rules Committee and with Democrats and Republicans in the Senate. We live in the United States of America, the richest country on the history of this planet. And yet, as we gather here today, close to 40 million of our fellow citizens don't know where the next meal is going to come from. There is not a single congressional district in America that is hunger-free. We ought to be ashamed of that. And hunger is a political condition. We can solve this problem, but we need to have the political will. And this conference, I hope, will provide that political will. I'll remind my colleagues the last time we had a conference on this subject was 54 years ago. And so I am looking forward to working with the White House and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to forge a path forward to end hunger in America once and for all. Madam Speaker, this rule also provides for consideration of a short-term continuing resolution that keeps the government funded at current levels through March 15 to give the United States Senate adequate time to pass this full-year omnibus agreement and get it to President Biden's desk so that he can sign it. And in the wake of the unprovoked and horrific invasion of Ukraine at the hands of Russian President Vladimir Putin, this Congress is taking urgent bipartisan action to protect global peace and security and hold Putin's corrupt regime accountable. Yesterday, I co-chaired a meeting of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, and we had a detailed discussion about what was happening in Ukraine and the fact that what is happening has risen to the level of war crimes, and there needs to be accountability. You know, we've all seen the awful pictures and the awful videos. Madam Speaker, families gunned down, apartment buildings bombed, and the indiscriminate use of force. Yet still, the people of Ukraine are courageously standing up for freedom. Congress, the Biden administration, and the people of the United States must stand with them. And that is exactly what this measure does. By encouraging the World Trade Organization members to suspend concessions to Russia, taking steps to review Russia's international trade status, and, very importantly, by reauthorizing a strengthened global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act so that the United States can impose further sanctions on human rights abusers in Russia and around the globe. America is standing up to bullies like Putin who think that they can evade their way into an empire and blackmail the world with their oil. And I want to commend President Biden for taking action to stop the import of Russian energy products into the United States, action which our legislation supports. I should also say, Madam Speaker, that I had kind of hoped that this could have come up under suspension, because I like to think there is no dissent on what we are doing in this legislation. And I'm concerned that some of my friends on the other side objected to the strengthening of human rights provisions in the Magnitsky Act. Ironically, the language that we are using is language very similar to the executive order put forward by President Trump. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, almost nothing, but I think he was right signing an executive order to actually strengthen the human rights criteria for the Magnitsky legislation. I mean, we ought to hold human rights abusers, those guilty of corruptions, accountable. And for anybody to want to weaken the standard, to want to let some people off the hook, I think is unconscionable. And so I hope there's a strong bipartisan vote on this. And finally, I want to highlight that our bipartisan omnibus agreement includes $13.6 billion in emergency military, humanitarian, and economic support for Ukraine. This week, the United States has warned that this is the, quote, fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II, end quote. And I'm proud that we are taking the moral obligation of humanitarian assistance seriously. Together, these measures, in addition to the strong leadership shown by President Biden, working quickly and in close consultation with our allies and partners, have placed enormous pressure on President Putin and his corrupt oligarchs to end this war. And I hope that he does that immediately. The final thing I'm going to say is to echo what I began with. This bill is not perfect through the eyes of anybody, whether you're a liberal Democrat like me or whether you're a conservative Republican. And this rule allows people to express their support and their lack of support for different parts of this bill very clearly. Some think that the defense section is too high. I personally do, but we have an opportunity to be able to vote yes or no on that. Some think that the investments in domestic spending are too high. I think they're not high enough, but whatever, people have an opportunity to be able to vote yes or no on that. So I hope that we can get support for the rule, and I hope that we can get this legislation passed today, sent over to the Senate, and help the American people. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman